All right. Hello, everyone. I'm Steph Pellish, your hostess here at Teacup Entrepreneurs, and I am excited to be joined by my guest today, Andrea Sahl. And she has quite the background, and I'm excited to have her here. Andrea spent 25 years in corporate America, both in finance and in marketing and consumer research. The last 15 years were spent working for the largest franchise brand in the world. And she closely works with franchisees to understand how they manage their businesses and then to analyze the factors that impacted the results. We're going to dive into a lot of that today. She no longer works in corporate and now owns her own franchise and has a goal to help other women entrepreneurs, other business owners, to understand how to create a culture, a happy people culture, she calls it, to help support their employees and be a best practice employer. Currently, she runs two seven-figure businesses with her husband and is expanding their business to 5 more locations in the Delaware Valley here in Pennsylvania. So you have a lot going on, Andrea, and I'm
Yeah,
excited to have you here. So welcome.
thank
And
you. And a
let's
mom of 3 kids.
and a mom of 3 kids, very important because that's the
Yeah,
busyness of all of it too,
I know. We do it all.
right?
Exactly.
So let's just dive in.
Yeah,
Tell us a little bit. So I gave a little bit about your
yeah,
background, but tell us who you are, how you got here, and
yeah,
a little bit about what's
yeah,
been going on.
yeah. So I was privileged to have such great work experience in my corporate world. And I always thought that that was just my path. I was going to climb the corporate ladder and, be some C-suite employee and just love life. And as I was going through my career, and the last 15 years was with the largest franchisor in the world, I loved what I did. And I loved working with the franchisees and really act as a consultant with like how to grow your business. What are things that are holding you back? And I used to dive in and do the research. And it was interesting because the high performing um, it was a restaurant business. So high performing restaurant versus low performing restaurants. The deciding factor of the two always came down to people every single time. So it was really evident to me how important that element of the business was
Hmm.
because obviously marketing is important and operations is important and your facility is important, but the people really decide and determine how profitable you are going to be. So while I loved my job, my company itself was incredibly toxic. It was just a culture that was really hard to work in and to manage in. And there was so many unspoken rules that you just didn't know where you stepped the line. And I was working for a very, very toxic boss who basically was left unaccountable for her decisions and she could do whatever she wanted. So I was always a high performing employee. I was one of the directors on the team. And she called me. She wanted to have a meeting with me. It was like January 10th of 2016. And so I meet with her and she's like, so I just want to let you know, I'm decided that I'm going to fire you because I don't like working with you anymore. And I was like,
Oh,
wait, what?
oh,
So here I
okay.
am. I'm like, okay. So I have a 5-year-old, a 3-year-old, and a 1-year-old. And just come
I've been
back
there.
from
That is a stressful time to begin with. So then to
yes,
lose a job.
exactly. So a lot of demands when they're real little, and my salary was a big portion of our overall household income. So I'm like, crap, how could this be happening? I mean, my whole identity was tied up into this. My plan was tied into this, and it was just single-handedly she was able to just take that away. But what was really interesting is she tells me that in January, but I wasn't allowed to go anywhere until May because she needed me for meetings that were already lined up. So I was like, Okay, now I'm really confused. So
Yeah, I
you
can
don't like working with me,
imagine.
but you didn't have a backfill. There was a whole lot of other reasons of why she did what she did. And she had done it to my peers as well over the years. And they warned me, but I could
Well,
beat it, but
sure.
you can't beat it.
On one hand, you're seeing where employees, the people that you're working with, the best performers are the ones that are supporting their people and highlighting their
Yep.
people. And on the other hand, in that same role, you are not being seen
Right.
as a people, as a person.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. So, here I was. I had to go in every day and put a smile on my face and not tell anybody and still do my job because my job affected my coworkers. And so my own integrity, I could not just do that to my coworkers and just go, I'm done. So there was a little bit of a game being played. She was trying to get me to quit, which I wasn't going to do. So she, had to pay the price in order to get me to walk, which is fine. But it was eye-opening to me because
Yeah,
I thought to myself,
it's not fine. It's
it, well,
very unethical and
yeah, but
really manipulative. And
and
yeah,
how are you allowed to do that? How
yeah,
HR allowed it to happen, which was, I was like, well, HR is a joke, right? Um, how are you able to go left unaccountable and be able to, destroy people's lives because you just feel like it? And it turns out there was somebody else she wanted in the role, one of her friends. So you just shatter somebody else, and because you wanted to make moves and you're left unchecked.
yeah,
And I thought, wow, that's really bad. And this was an incredibly toxic
yeah.
environment. So, and there was nobody defending me. I had the second in command of the region pulled me into the office and said, I didn't say this, but there's paranoia going on. But I didn't say that. And I'm sorry. And he walked out. And I was like, where am I?
Right. Well,
Am I
and
in a Mission Impossible?
are there cameras watching? Are we being punked?
Am I on
No,
candid
and
camera?
and you're in corporate where there are a lot of checks and balances. There is a
Yes.
board of directors. There is a C-suite. There are
Yes.
people who are above who are supposed to be managing those kinds of
Yeah.
behaviors and activities. And so, you know, it's not surprising because we hear a lot about that. But then to become a an owner of a business. Like a lot of our audience are the business owners, and there are no checks and balances. And
I
so,
know.
how do we?
I know.
I know this is
Well,
what you've done now, but like, how do we set up checks and balances for ourselves to make
yeah.
sure that that kind of toxicity is not being carried over or
Perpetuated. Yes.
perpetuated? Yes.
Yes. And it comes from your own integrity. And for us, so here we are. It was, early January. And we were living in North Carolina at the time, even though we're from the Philadelphia area, because that's where my company had taken me down to. And my kids were at swim lessons. And my husband's like, you know what? We should just own our own business. And we have such good skills and we complement each other. And I was like, "Ah, but that wasn't in my plan."
It
You know,
never is.
wasn't in my plan. I don't know if I want to run my own business. But honestly, the thought at the time, I was looking on LinkedIn, like, oh my gosh, I got to find a job. Like,
Mhm.
and every job I looked at, I was like, oh, that sounds awful. No, that sounds awful. And the thought of going to get another job, I thought, I just can't. I
That's
felt like
so
the door was
relatable.
open. Yeah,
I
the
think
door
that's how
was
so many women become entrepreneurs because that's so
exactly.
relatable. Like, I just can't go get another job. I just
Yes,
can't do this thing any longer because it's so
yes,
draining. And you're already,
yes.
we love our children, but you're being drained there. You've got all the other things in
Yeah,
life. And so to then show up in a workplace that's going to be draining, it,
yeah. I mean, I was already working super hard to begin with. I was traveling 2 weeks a month with three little kids, gone for 4 or 5 days at a time, and working crazy hours. So it wasn't like I didn't have the work, ethic. It
Sure.
was more about, for me, of if I'm going to work this hard, maybe I should just work for myself because
Okay.
I'm going to work that hard. And
Yeah.
so I had a little bit of a pity party when it first happened, but then I said, okay, here's an opportunity for me to maybe start the new chapter in my life. And that's I have a choice. I can either walk through door A or walk through door B. Door A could be just find another job, have the security. I like security. I love
Hmm.
it. I love it a lot. So when you become an
As
entrepreneur,
with
you
human
are
nature, yes.
unstable.
Yes.
There is no security. So I had to learn and stretch in order to make the leap. And I'm so glad I did because I am on a completely opposite end. I'm a different person. And there's all new world that has opened up to me that I would have never had that chance. And I felt like the universe was like, you need to go and do this.
Yes, so we kind of
So
skipped a step here. So let me just take us back for a minute because your husband said, let's own a business. And
yeah,
you
so we
mentioned
were
being at swim lessons. So
we
take
were
us
at
back.
swim lessons and I'm watching my girls in the swim lessons and he's scrolling on his phone and he's looking at I think it was a site of like top 100 franchises to own. And I was like, he's naming them. And I'm like, no, 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 no. That sounds awful. No, because for me, I didn't want to own a business just to own a business. I
Hmm.
wanted to own a business that I cared about, like that it
Yeah.
spoke to me. So as I'm sitting there, I start looking around at where I am. Now I had been a swim mom. I called myself a swim mom for 2 years. So we had been going to swim lessons every Friday night at 6 o'clock for 2 years. And it was like the first time I ever actually sat in the lobby and started to look around. And I see my girls smiling and laughing and having a blast. They loved going to swim lessons. And I said, all right, Brad, you want to own a business? This is the only one I want to own. And it was that brand, it's Aquatot Swim Schools. And it was in North Carolina. It had just recently opened up, and there was none in the Northeast at all. So when we called, he looks it up and he's like, it's a franchise. It's like, oh, yay. So he calls and they're like, well, the North Carolina territory is completely sold out. And we're like, we don't care. We're from Pennsylvania. Can you bring us up to Philly? And they're like, that would be fantastic. So that was in January, and they awarded us a
So
franchise in July.
this is right after you lost your job. You started
Well, I was still
diving right in.
working because
Yes.
remember, she needed me.
Yes.
So
So
still
in the midst
working.
of all of this, you have a lot of transitions happening
So
at the
actually,
same
the
time.
HR person, she goes, you know what? Can you just stop working in April 1st, and we'll just keep paying you, but just stop and we'll pay you. And then I think my last day was May 5th. And then just drop everything off and I'm like, I'm so confused. It was a very confusing time.
I'm sure.
So, because like I said, for me, it was more of integrity where I was still working because it was my job. Like I felt like it was important and I had people that were counting on me.
Yeah, some people
So
may have just up and left, but you continued to show up.
I
And
know. And I
it
think,
speaks
well,
volumes of you.
I
And
just,
it's very, I mean,
some
I
people would
think,
say you're crazy.
but
Yes.
it's why you've now created what you've created because I can
Yes.
tell like it's just a part of you.
Yes.
And so now you
Yeah.
own not one, but two franchises. I want to just dive in real quick because I know you own this business with your
Yeah.
husband. And so I'd love to know, like, when you're having this conversation about, okay, we're complementary, how do we show up and own a business together? My husband and
Yeah.
I owned a business with other family members.
Yeah.
And it was a major challenge. And there were a lot of times where we had to choose the relationship over the business just for the sake of all
Yeah.
of all of the things. And it became a real struggle for us. And so I'd love for you to just tell us why you thought going into business with your husband was a good idea.
Yeah.
If anybody supported you, if anybody said don't do that, that's a terrible idea, or if it was just natural. Tell me all of the things.
Yeah. So, it was scary. The one thing that I will say is him and I we have the same vision of what we wanted.
Mhm,
We both looked at it as we sat down and we agreed upon what our goals were. So our overarching goals were we wanted to be the best swim school and the best employer. So with those two goals, every decision that we made had to meet those screens. So that was number one. The second thing was to define our roles. That's really tricky when when you are in partnership
mhm.
with people, and it can be with family members, but understanding where each other's strengths and weaknesses are. So he's a former attorney, and that went into the operations of my former employer as well. So had operations backgrounds. His strengths are very different than mine. And we were just in agreement of what are your strengths? What are my strengths? Here's what I should be doing. Here's what you should be doing. And you have to have that communication
Yeah.
and that dialogue. So we sometimes even check in multiple times a day, or even have checkpoints throughout the week where we're even like, hey, this happened, this happened, this happened. How do you want me to proceed? And you have to have that grounding. I will tell you, it wasn't smooth at first, and it was bumpy, and there was times where he went, you need to stay in your lane, and he would scream at me. And I'm
Mhm.
like, I don't know,
I mean,
I just keep doing.
if it was smooth, I would wonder where all the bumps are going to come because that's how we learn things,
Yeah,
right? There are
yeah.
obstacles that get in the way, especially when we're doing something new.
Yes, yes. And it was just really hard. I mean, there was times where, yeah, I mean, you open up and you think everybody has the vision that you're going to become an entrepreneur and you're going to be the overnight success and everything's going to be great. And you put everything down on paper and it's all supposed to go according to plan, and then it doesn't.
It looks pretty and linear,
Yes.
and
And
then
it
it
looks
ends up
really
being
pretty
circular.
in black and white on the paper.
Yeah.
And, I mean, we were rejected by multiple banks until somebody approved us. And then even with that, I mean, we ran out of money like 6 months in. So it's getting creative and being supportive of each other. I mean, not to say there wasn't moments where I just literally laid in bed and put the blankets over me, but I am the type of person that I only get to do that for one day. And
You
then
have
you
your
get
pity
back up.
party and then you move
Yes.
on.
You get back up and then you keep moving because it is hard. And the two of us, and I think my husband's always been, throughout my career, has been my biggest cheerleader and supporter. So he's always been the person that has been very much like, we can do this. It's just another boulder in the road. We can
Yeah.
go around it. And I needed that because this was so new to me. When we
Yeah.
were in North Carolina, he owned his own law practice. So he had experience with understanding that you have to ebb and flow when you own your
Yeah.
own business.
Yeah.
And you have situations that you have to figure out solutions instead of just crumbling and giving up.
Yeah. So I'd love you said like 6 months in, you ran out of money and you had to become
Yeah.
creative. So many of our entrepreneurs are in that place
Yes.
of like, they're not quite making enough to
Yes.
maybe leave their job or to keep the business going. And it's that difficult decision of, do I trust myself? Do I trust this business will grow? Or is this not the right thing? And so I'd love for you to talk a little bit about what your process was in how you got creative, but what really gave you that determination to move through it?
Well, each other.
Yeah.
Um, because we also are very committed both in our professional development and
Hmm.
reading a lot of just leadership books and the getting your mindset in the right place to say, I know that there's potential here. I knew that this was what I wanted to do. And so one of the things that when we decided to get this franchise and we met with the franchisor and made the decision, I told them, I don't have a plan B. So if this doesn't work out, I'm out. Like I'm everything's lost.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes if we have a plan B, we tend to fall back
Yeah.
and
Use
choose your
that
plan B
safety
as
net.
soon as it gets hard. So that perseverance, I remember reading a book called Grit, and she
Mhm.
talks about persevering through the hard times and believing that there is blessings in adversity
Yeah.
and that you're going to get through it one way or another. So I'd rather try my best to get through it to have the best possible outcome versus giving up just wasn't an option
Yeah.
because I
And
believed in it too much.
yeah. And it sounds like you have, from other conversations we've had, but really supportive franchisors. Like we owned a
Too.
business that was a franchise and we did
Mhm.
not have great support. And that really was a big factor in why we didn't continue with it. But
Yes,
that also makes a difference. And doing your
it
homework and
does.
talking to them, it sounds
Yeah,
like also was a really good,
yes,
this is what we want.
yeah. And that's really important. So my corporate was working for the largest franchisor in the world. So I knew what a good franchisor relationship should look like versus what
Yeah.
a bad one is. And I
Yeah.
understood the types of questions and the thought process behind it.
I
So
wish I had you on my side.
yeah,
What, 10 years ago when we made that decision.
yes,
But
yeah.
yeah. And
But I
so,
mean, like I mean it took, but it was 6 months of talking with them and they weren't quick, but was funny. It was I wasn't quick. And a lot of franchisors, they just want to know, do you have the money? Let's go.
yeah, that's how
And
ours was.
I wasn't interested in being in business with somebody that has that mentality. So as soon as that was brought up, or even, and of course it wasn't, so it wasn't an issue, but if it had been, I probably would have tapped out
Yeah.
because I would have known what type of people I was dealing with.
Yeah. So let's dive in. So
Yeah.
this is where you've taken your business. You want your business to be the best employer,
Yes.
the best place to
Yes.
work. And so
Yes.
tell
Yeah.
us about how you've done that or what kind of practices that you've put in place to
Yeah.
that.
So, you have to be really intentional with your work culture. I have a mentor who owned 30 of the restaurants that I used to work for, and he's since retired. But when I decided to buy a franchise, I called him up. I was so excited, buy a franchise. He goes, that's awesome. And he's like, that's great. He goes, decide what kind of culture you want, because if you don't, it will be created for you. And I promise you, you won't like it. And
Ooh.
I was like, awesome. Thank
Yeah,
you.
I've got full body chills from that one.
I
That one
know.
landed.
And
Yeah,
I was
because it
like,
it's so easy to just let it become whatever it becomes, and without
yeah,
intention, you don't get what
you
you
don't.
want. Isn't that the whole, like, that's life in a
Yes.
nutshell right there, right?
Yes, exactly. And so, as we wanted to become the best employer, that meant putting together processes and people practices in place that made people enjoy their job and want to come to work and be happy working for us. And so it starts at the very beginning with your business plan, what you want to be about, your goals, right? And then your employee handbook and what's your rules and what kind of environment are you creating? I mean, we have everything down to a gossip policy because there is things that we will not tolerate. And the employees need to know what's acceptable and what's not.
Yeah,
And
and so
then,
many people just have a standard employee
right,
handbook. You read it the first day, sign a piece of paper that says you read it, and it's just a standard X, Y,
yeah,
and Z that doesn't go into things like that. So yours is
right.
obviously much more detailed.
Yeah, and we read it to them, I will tell you. So
Okay.
there is not the whole handbook, but the important parts of that directly impact the employee's experience working. So your time off policy, your vacation policy, your sick policy, those types of things, we read to them. Because if you just email your employee handbook and say, check this box and that you've read it, guess what? They don't. They're
Nobody's reading
not
it.
reading
Right.
it. They're not reading it. I
So
promise you they're not
you're
reading.
making it interactive. You're making sure that
Yes.
they not only read it, but understand and you're having a conversation
Yes.
about it. That's amazing.
Yes, yes. And then we put together our benefits package and research the industry that we operate in and say, what benefits can help us stand out from the rest? What's our hiring practices? What questions do we want to ask that help us hire the best possible people that we want on our team? Because you have to be intentional about who you're bringing in.
Hmm.
Because I tell people all the time in interviews, I don't hire just anybody. I hire people that are going to fit into my team,
Right.
that are going to be a good fit. Your orientation, what does that look like? Because that's really your first impression for new employees. What's your training process? How do you train people, and do they feel prepared in once they get through training to start working? And then how do you retain? A lot of employers want to jump right to the retaining and miss all the other pieces and the elements of
It's
it.
that reactive piece. I need to react to,
Yes.
I'm losing
Yes.
employees. How do
You're
I
not
keep them?
happy? Yeah, let's go bowling. And you're like, bowling's great. I'm not knocking bowling, but
Right.
you need all the other elements.
Yeah.
So with all those things, we did not only have we pulled from our prior experience, but then we just researched and we trial and error and trial and error and trial and error, and we put together processes. And it is a living document because it does continue to evolve and change. But
Mhm.
all these things, that these tools, these business tools that we put together and created, which I created the Happy People Culture, which is a manual and a workbook that sums it all up. It's it it's in its entirety. Like you need all of it because it all works together,
Now,
and it's so important.
is this something that you learned and were taught in your corporate experience, or is it more of what you saw worked in the franchisees that you were working with? Like, how did you learn that these were the pieces that needed to be put in place?
So the core elements came from my working experience from my prior employer, but the elements to it are from us tweaking and continuing to refine. Because at the end of the day, everybody tries to hold their people accountable for, for their, working environment. And if somebody's not doing what they needs to do, but you can't hold people accountable if you don't have the rules in place, if you don't have your practices in place to be able to hold them accountable. So when I talk with other franchisees, even in my own franchising, you know, what do you call it?
Your community or your
My own
network?
community, they're always asking my husband and I, what do you guys do for this? What do you do for that? What do you do for this? And I go, I can tell you what we do, but if you're just looking to cherry pick, like, tell me what your performance review document looks like. Okay, I'll take that. Tell me what interview questions you ask. Okay, I'll just take that. And you're cherry picking and which is it can be okay if you have a system that's already working,
Hmm.
but if you're struggling just
Right. If you
staffing
have a system and just need to update the document or update the questions, that's great.
exactly,
But if you don't have the whole system in place, that one document, it's,
exactly.
I'm sitting in
It,
my playroom, so this idea comes to me. I can buy a bin for all of the blocks, but if I
right,
don't have a system to keep that bin somewhere in the playroom, my playroom's never going to be clean. Those
exactly.
blocks might get put away once in a
Right,
while, but
right,
it's not going to overall help by
right.
buying a bin. And I feel
Exactly.
like that document is
Exactly.
like the bin from Target that, oh, this
Right.
one's pretty.
Right. Right. So what I thought was really, I think the thing that changed my mindset and which, so we're working, right? We opened in
Hmm.
2017. We're working, and we have our people practices. We're doing it. We tell other franchisees, but everyone's kind of, this is hard work. I mean, developing people practices is not the glamorous, easy part of owning a business. It's, you have to put some thought into it and you have to plan it out. Then 2020 hits and we get shut down for 3 months. And that was really, I mean, obviously it was like incredibly scary. And we're like,
Hmm.
how's this happening? All of our part-time people, we tell them like, okay, we just got shut down. We want you to go and file unemployment. We help them. We make sure that they have the documents they need. If they have questions, we'll help them figure that out. We did keep we had two managers. We did keep them on payroll because we didn't want, them to have to figure things out. And then we did, I think it was every 2 or 3 weeks, we would do Zoom calls to touch base and keep people informed and say, hey, this is what we're hearing. This is what we know. Because they
Hmm.
started telling us, oh, you're only shut down for 30 days. And then they said, okay, now it's going to be like 60 days. And then it's
Nobody
going to be
knew.
not,
Nobody had
nobody
any
knew.
answers.
And
Yeah.
we didn't know. And so the information was coming in. And so we wanted to be transparent with our team because they're having to, figure out their life.
Yeah.
And then we were able to open 3 months later. It was exactly 3 months. And so we do a call and we're like, we're ready to get back open. We're going to have everybody come in like a week before. And then we're just going to do some refresher training and, get the place ready. And, of course, we had to do so much stuff. If you remember, we had to put all our chairs 6 feet
Yeah.
apart and we had to put
All
stickers
the,
on the floors and things like that. But
oh yeah.
every single employee came back to work.
That's
And
incredible.
mhm. So we had about
That speaks
15 people.
volumes about
Yes.
how you showed up for your part-time employees who probably could have continued to
Yeah.
collect unemployment,
Yeah.
not come back to work,
Yes.
or,
Yes.
maybe didn't even need to work because I'm assuming you have a lot of younger staff. Maybe they were in
Yeah.
school or
Yeah.
navigating
Most of them
that.
are in college. Yep. And and talking, so we had weekly calls with the franchisor who was trying to help everybody navigate this.
Uh-huh.
Based on what I've heard on those weekly calls, most people lost anywhere from 30 to 70% of their staff.
Well,
And we lost nobody.
that's
And so
amazing.
I was like, I was so grateful. But then I'm like, we're doing something right.
Yeah.
And I feel like we have a lot to share of what we do. And that's what led me to go, I want to document all this stuff. I want to put it down on paper. And so I've been developing all this since 2020.
Okay.
And so there was a lot of just, on the weekends, I'm going to crank out a page. And, it took a long time for me to just put this all together. But I feel like if small business owners really understood how much impact they can have by creating a positive, happy work environment for their people, they would realize that they're ultimately creating happy customers who become loyal repeat customers because every single one of our reviews that we get, either on Google or we have another system that we use, customers recognize the employees every time. I love how nice everyone is there. They have the best employees. I love
Yeah,
my swim coach. I love the front desk. They know my name. We we create an environment, and we have an expectation of our employees to create an environment that is customer service friendly, that is
yeah,
first and foremost. But if we didn't care enough, would they care? If we didn't care about our people, would our
right.
people care
Right.
enough?
You're present and you're mindful of your people and your people feel it.
Yes,
And then your clients, your
yes,
customers feel that as well. And
yes,
they reflect that back,
yes,
which
yes,
isn't that the goal?
yes,
And
yes,
then they tell other people and it
yes.
builds your business because your
Because your
people are
customers
happy.
have choices.
Yeah.
They have choices. And I want them to never think twice about choosing us
Yeah.
because they'll miss their favorite people that they see.
So
Because
with
I'm only me. I can't be everybody, you know?
yeah, you can't,
But
we haven't figured
it's
out how to clone you
no,
yet.
they haven't figured out how to clone me, but that's okay. But as a small business owner, I remember waking up in the morning and looking at my phone, going, "Do people show up today? I hope people showed up for work today." Um, or having a hard time finding good quality people and just being so frustrated,
Yeah.
being ghosted and all the different issues. Because when you get into any business that requires you to hire help to help you build your
Yeah.
business, you are now in the people business
Yeah. We
and they are
struggled
your,
with finding good staff
yes,
and we would hire someone and they would start and they wouldn't show up on their start date
yep,
because they got another job.
yep,
And we were relying on them to show up on their start date because we needed staff. And so
yep,
I've been down that path and, look, can only learn from the past, but having a document like I've seen your happy people culture document, having a document, having those systems in place, we had some, but they weren't strong and they weren't consistent. And with
yeah,
multiple people owning the business, we had different, and because we had a high turnover, we had multiple people putting these processes in place that did it always a little bit different
right,
because there wasn't a standard practice.
yep,
There wasn't an ongoing conversation about this is not exactly how it should look, but this is the baseline of how it should look. And then
right.
you can adjust personality wise from there.
Absolutely. Absolutely. There could be things that you need to tweak because it's more customized to what your needs are but the core of it, the foundation of it is there.
Yeah.
Yeah. And all that turnover, you're spending so much money, whether it's the job posts that you have to keep putting out there or the training costs of people that don't
Yep.
even make it 30 days. It's constant wasting money versus building that nucleus of people that want to stay there.
Yeah, it was interesting for us because the people that we bought a franchise from someone else and the people
Mhm.
that came in with us when we purchased the franchise stayed until we left. And it was the new people that were coming in and we had a couple stay, but it was a higher frequency of, again, we had a lot of other problems as well.
Yeah,
But having a
yeah,
document or a support like that,
yeah,
because we had just the standard handbook that we were given by our franchisors and told, here it is. No one
yep,
said, here it is, now customize it.
right,
Here it is, now
yep,
individualize it to meet your personal needs.
right.
And so,
And
you
most
know,
franchisees don't give you the people tools either because they don't want the whole joint employer. So they want to stay out of whatever it is that you need to do from a people standpoint. They
right.
kind of distance themselves. So they don't really help you create those systems that you need.
Yeah, it was all about how we can spend more money on marketing.
Exactly. Yes, they will help
Money
you
that
with
money that
that.
we didn't have to spend on marketing, but
Yes,
that's
exactly.
again another
Exactly.
story.
And so for you, I'm sure you Googled or went to SHRM or, I mean, just like everybody else does, and you just try to figure it out. And
Yeah.
it can be very
We
incredibly
would
time
it
consuming.
and it was very reactive, and so it was like we could
Yes.
never catch up, and we would
Yes.
realize like, oh, we don't have a policy in place for this, now we need to go put that in, but we never really had like a great system to capture all of those policies either. And so I know so many people who own franchises
Yep.
would benefit from this, but
Yeah.
also just people who own their own business because it's such great practice. It's really like a manual for here's all of the things that you would need to know in HR that you need to have set up in order to have a great
Right.
business. If you have employees, there's so
Exactly.
much knowledge in there, and it's
Exactly.
incredible
But you
what you've
can't
been
afford
able
an
to.
HR person. So yeah.
Right. But you're still doing it on your own. You're still trying to
You're
bootstrap
trying to
it.
figure it out on your own. Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely. And that's really was my intent of having a resource for small business owners that they could use and implement, because I just did an accountability um, presentation for my franchise community.
Hmm.
In January, when I went out, I had to fly out to Arizona. So I spoke with my peers about how to hold employees accountable. And I'm talking to people who have been in business a little bit longer than me, and they were asking me questions saying, hey, can I get your document? So, I think
Yeah.
we assume that everybody's got it all figured out, but the reality is we don't. And we're
Yeah.
just trying to make it one more day.
Yeah.
And I'll
So
never forget, somebody said to me, I'm one employee away from not being able to open today. Because if somebody doesn't show up, I can't open up the
yeah.
doors. That's how I think that I really wanted this to be something that can be supportive for
Yeah.
small business owners so they can get better and improve.
Yeah. So if somebody wanted to find more about what you're doing or learn more about what you're doing or grab this
Yeah.
amazing manual that you have coming out soon, how would they be able to reach you or get in contact?
So right now, I'm in the process of getting the website up and running. So I'm only a few weeks away. So the best would be to email me
Okay.
at it's info@happypeopleculture.com.
So info at happypeopleculture.com.
Yes.
All right.
So you can email me, get you on an email distribution list, and then you'll be the first to know when it's ready to download. So it is an ebook, manual, and a workbook that you would download. And then in the summertime, I'm shooting for this summer being able to launch a digital course academy.
Amazing.
Yeah.
I'm very excited for you about that.
Thank you.
And if somebody in a couple months wanted to check out the website because it was up and running, is there a website that a domain that you can share with us too?
Yes. It's www.happypeopleculture.com.
Easy to remember. Happy People
Super
Culture.
easy.
Love it. Andrea, thank you so much. I'm so
Thank
excited
you.
to hear about this. Like I said, I wish it was something that I had 10 years ago because that would have been prior to even purchasing our franchise, to know questions to ask, to have systems in place. And I'm really grateful for you joining me today. So thank you
Thank
so
you
much.
so much. Thank you.